The emissary's arrival. The recycled air of Nexus Station carried a metallic tang that Commander Theron Vale had come to associate with trouble. He adjusted the collar of his formal diplomatic uniform, the fabric stiff and uncomfortable against his scarred neck. The station, a massive interlocking series of habitation rings orbiting a dormant star, represented the last hope for peace between humanity and the Valari Dominion. "Commander, we're approaching the central atrium," Lieutenant Rooks announced, his voice tight with anxiety. "Security protocols indicate we should expect a full Valari honor guard." Theron nodded, his expression revealing nothing of the storm brewing inside him. 3 years since the Battle of Helios Prime, and the nightmares still came with shocking regularity, violet energy cascading across human ships, the screams over comms as atmospheric integrity failed, and that final desperate maneuver that had earned him both his commendation and the scars that stretched from his jaw to his collarbone. "Remember," he told his small entourage of human representatives, "we're here for peace. Whatever happens, whatever they say, we maintain diplomatic protocol." The doors to the atrium hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber dominated by a holographic representation of the local star system. The light cast everything in shades of amber and gold, including the waiting Valari delegation. Sovereign Nyara of the Valari stood motionless at the center of her guards, her posture rigid with carefully controlled hostility. Like all Valari, she possessed a lean, graceful form, her skin a pale blue-green that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns beneath the surface. Her eyes, large, faceted, and brilliant turquoise, tracked Theron's approach with predatory focus. "Commander Vale," she said, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of her species. "We welcome you to Nexus Station, though I question the wisdom of your government in sending you specifically." Theron gave the formal bow required by protocol, precisely measured to show respect without submission. "Sovereign Nyara, I bring greetings from Earth Central. I'm here to ensure the Treaty of Proxima is properly implemented." "The Butcher of Helios comes speaking of peace?" One of the Valari guards hissed, the patterns on his skin flaring with agitation. Nyara raised a six-fingered hand, silencing her guard. "Commander Vale's reputation precedes him. However, we will proceed as agreed." The formal reception continued with painful politeness, but Theron felt the weight of Valari stares boring into him. He had expected this. Earth Central had selected him precisely because of his notoriety, a psychological tactic that he found distasteful but strategically sound. Later, in his assigned quarters, Theron shed the formal uniform and studied the station schematics projected above his desk. Nexus Station was an engineering marvel, built in the neutral zone between human and Valari space. Its construction had taken 15 years and represented the largest cooperative project between the two species. A soft chime announced a visitor. Theron activated the door, revealing Lieutenant Rooks with a data pad. "Sir, I've completed the preliminary security sweep," Rooks reported. "There's something strange in the maintenance logs. Power fluctuations in the outer ring, Section 17B. Theron frowned. "Environmental systems?" "No, sir. The fluctuations correspond to data transmission spikes." "Unauthorized communications?" "Possibly. And there's more." Rooks hesitated. "The Valari security chief requested your presence at a briefing in 30 minutes. Apparently, there's been an incident." Theron's instincts, honed by years of combat and diplomacy, prickled with warning. "What kind of incident?" "They wouldn't say, sir. Just that it concerned station security." The Valari Security Center was a stark contrast to the organic curves typical of their architecture. Here, function dictated form, with holographic displays showing every section of the massive station. Security Chief Vorin, a battle-scarred Valari with one clouded eye, stood beside Sovereign Nyara, both studying a display of the outer ring. "Commander Vale," Nyara acknowledged without looking up. "I believe we have a mutual problem." Theron approached cautiously. "Chief Vorin." "Sovereign." Someone is attempting to sabotage this station, Voron stated bluntly. And they're using human encryption protocols. Theron's expression hardened. I need more than accusations, Chief. Not accusations. Facts. Voron manipulated the display, zooming in on a section of the outer ring. We detected unusual activity in the life support systems. Investigation revealed a series of coded commands designed to gradually reduce oxygen levels throughout the station. Subtle enough to be mistaken for a malfunction, Nyara added, her faceted eyes finally meeting Theron's. Until it's too late. And you're certain these are human protocols? Theron asked, studying the code fragments displayed. The base encryption is human military grade, Voron confirmed. Though there are irregularities. Theron leaned closer, his experienced eye catching what the Valari might have missed. These aren't current protocols. They're outdated, from before the Battle of Helios. A moment of silence settled between them as the implications sank in. Extremists, Nyara suggested. Those who oppose the peace process. On either side, Theron agreed grimly. May I? He gestured toward the console. After a brief hesitation, Voron stepped aside. Theron's fingers danced across the holographic interface, digging deeper into the code structure. This isn't just sabotage, he muttered. They're trying to. The station suddenly lurched, throwing them all off balance. Emergency lighting flashed on as the main power grid failed. Security breach in Outer Ring, Section 17B, an automated voice announced calmly. Decompression warning. Emergency bulkheads engaged. That's where the power fluctuations were coming from, Rooks exclaimed. Theron's mind raced. It's a diversion. They wanted us looking at life support while they... A second explosion rocked the station, this one closer. The security center's reinforced doors automatically sealed, trapping them inside.
Central hub breach, the automated system continued. Hostile forces detected. Security feeds flickered to life, showing armed figures in environmental suits moving through the corridors, a mix of human and Valari physiology, working together. Mercenaries, Chief Voron spat. Using the chaos to board. Nyara's skin pulsed with alarm patterns. The Peace Summit. If they disrupt it. It's worse than that, Theron interrupted, pointing to the feed from the central hub.
They're heading for the station's command center. If they take control of the main systems, they could vent the entire station, Voron finished grimly. Killing everyone aboard, including all the human and Valari leadership. Theron turned to Nyara. Sovereign, we need to act. Now. Your security forces on one flank, my people on the other. We can catch them in a crossfire before they reach the command center. Nyara studied him, distrust warring with pragmatism. And if this is an elaborate human ploy? Then I'm the worst conspirator in history, Theron replied flatly. Because I'll be dead alongside you. Another explosion shook the station, and alarms blared with increasing urgency. Station integrity at 70% and falling, the automated system announced. Emergency protocols activated. We don't have time to debate, Theron pressed. Nyara's eyes narrowed, then she nodded once, sharply. Chief Voron, deploy your teams. Coordinate with Commander Vale's lieutenant. She turned to Theron. You and I will take the maintenance shafts to outflank them. Theron raised an eyebrow in surprise. Sovereign, with respect, you should remain in a secure location. This is my station, Commander, Nyara replied, her hand moving to a ceremonial blade at her waist that Theron suspected was far from ceremonial. And I will not hide while it falls. As they moved toward the emergency access panel, Theron caught Lieutenant Rooks's concerned expression. Coordinate with Chief Voron, he ordered. And keep the channel open. The maintenance shaft was cramped, designed for utility drones rather than humanoids. Theron took the lead, his combat instincts on high alert as they navigated the narrow passages. Behind him, Sovereign Nyara moved with the fluid grace of her species, her breathing controlled and even. "The irony is not lost on me, Commander," she said softly as they approached the junction that would lead them to the central hub. "The Butcher of Helios, now fighting to save Volari lives." Theron paused, choosing his words carefully. "History is written by survivors, Sovereign. And sometimes, even they don't get the full story." Before Nyara could respond, the station rocked with yet another explosion, this one close enough to send a shudder through the maintenance shaft. The metal groaned ominously, and then, with a sickening lurch, the section of flooring beneath them gave way. Theron felt the momentary weightlessness of free fall, followed by the impact of landing hard on his shoulder. Dust and debris rained down around them as the maintenance shaft collapsed, sealing them off from both their destination and their return path. In the emergency lighting, he could see Nyara picking herself up, her skin pulsing with distress patterns. They were trapped together in an isolated section of the station, with mercenaries moving toward the command center and no way to communicate with their forces. The peace of the galaxy hung in the balance, and time was running out. Revelations in the dark. The emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across the debris-strewn corridor where Commander Theron Vale and Sovereign Nyara found themselves trapped. A thin mist of coolant leaked from a ruptured pipe overhead, giving the air a bitter taste that made Theron's eyes water. "Status report, Sovereign," he asked, scanning their surroundings for any immediate threats. Nyara touched a small device on her wrist, which projected a holographic display that sputtered and failed. "Communications are down. The explosion must have damaged the local relay nodes." Her luminescent patterns pulsed with frustration as she examined the collapsed passage behind them. "This section is completely sealed off." Theron tested his own communication device with similar results. "We need to find another way to the command center." "There's an auxiliary maintenance hub 2 sections ahead," Nyara said, pointing down the corridor. "If it's intact, we could access the emergency override systems." They moved cautiously through the damaged corridor, the groaning of the station's stressed hull a constant reminder of their precarious situation. Theron noticed how Nyara's movements betrayed a slight limp, though she made no complaint. "You're injured," he observed. "It's nothing," she replied tersely. "Focus on the mission, Commander." As they rounded a corner, the corridor ahead was blocked by a tangle of collapsed support beams and conduits. Theron approached carefully, testing the stability of the wreckage. "We can squeeze through here," he said, indicating a narrow opening. "But it's tight." Nyara's expression remained impassive, but her skin patterns flickered with what Theron recognized as apprehension. "Very well." Theron went first, carefully navigating the jagged edges of torn metal. Once through, he turned to assist Nyara, who hesitated briefly before accepting his outstretched hand. The physical contact sent a surprising jolt through him. Her skin was cooler than a human's, with a subtle electric quality that reminded him of standing near a charged field. The auxiliary maintenance hub was miraculously intact, its systems running on backup power. Nyara immediately accessed the main terminal, her 6-fingered hands moving with practiced efficiency across the interface. "The mercenaries have reached the outer perimeter of the command center," she reported grimly. "Security teams are engaging, but they're outnumbered." Theron studied the station schematic. "There's a service shaft that runs directly beneath the command center. If we can reach it, we might be able to bypass their forces." "That section requires highest-level authorization," Nyara pointed out. Theron met her gaze steadily. "Which you have." A moment of tension stretched between them. Trust was a fragile commodity between their species, especially with their history. "What really happened at Helios Prime, Commander?" Nyara asked suddenly. "The Butcher who single-handedly destroyed 3 Volari warships and killed over 2,000 of my people." Theron's expression hardened. "Is this really the time for? If I'm going to trust you with access to critical systems, then yes, it is." Her large, faceted eyes reflected the emergency lighting like fractured jewels. What happened? Theron looked away, the memories he kept carefully contained threatening to break free. The official report is accurate enough. I commanded the defensive action when Valari forces entered the Helios system. And yet there are inconsistencies, Nyara pressed. Gaps in the record. The station shuddered again, and a distant alarm began to wail. We don't have time for this, Theron insisted. Make time, Commander. The truth, now. Theron exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging slightly. Helios Prime was a trap. But not set by humans. Nyara's skin patterns shifted in surprise. There was a faction within the Valari military, extremists who believed coexistence was impossible, Theron continued. They staged the confrontation to ensure war would be inevitable. They deliberately positioned civilian transport ships in their battle formation. That's preposterous, Nyara hissed. Valari would never. The captain of the lead warship contacted me on a secure channel moments before engagement, Theron interrupted. Commander Zeril. He warned me of what was happening, tried to stand down his forces. He was executed by his own second-in-command for treason. Nyara's patterns pulsed with shock. Zeril was my cousin. He disappeared during that battle. The official report listed him as killed by human forces. I tried to limit casualties, Theron said quietly. The maneuver that earned me that charming nickname, it was designed to disable the warships while sparing the transports. But the second ship's reactor was unstable. When it breached. He closed his eyes briefly. The casualty count should have been far lower. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the distant sounds of the station in distress. I'll need verification, Nyara finally said. Theron reached into his collar and withdrew a small data crystal hanging from a chain. Zeril's final transmission. I've carried it since that day. It's encrypted with a Valari military key, one only a high-ranking officer would possess. Nyara took the crystal with visible reluctance. She inserted it into the terminal, her fingers inputting a complex sequence. The screen flickered, and then Commander Zeril's face appeared, a Valari male with distinctive royal markings similar to Nyara's own. The message was brief but damning. Zeril's words confirmed everything Theron had claimed, ending with a plea that his sacrifice might prevent full-scale war. When the message ended, Nyara stood motionless, her luminescence dimmed to almost nothing, a sign of deep mourning among her species. All this time, she whispered. We believed. Propaganda serves those in power, Theron said gently. On both sides. Nyara's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly alert. The mercenaries. The mixed teams of human and Valari, they're not just opportunists. No, Theron agreed grimly. I'd wager they're working for the same faction that orchestrated Helios. The peace summit threatens their agenda. We need to move, Nyara said, suddenly decisive. She entered her authorization codes, unlocking access to the service shaft. This way. As they descended into the cramped shaft, Theron activated his wrist light. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your cousin. He died with honor. In our culture, Commander, we believe that those who die preventing violence are granted special status in the afterlife, Nyara replied softly. Their spirits become guardians of peace. The service shaft led them through the heart of the station, bypassing the main corridors where fighting had broken out. Through maintenance gratings, they caught glimpses of the conflict, station security forces battling the mercenaries in chaotic skirmishes. We're almost at the command center, Nyara whispered, consulting the holographic map projected from her wrist device. But there's a problem. The external access hatch requires dual authentication, biometric and code. Can we bypass it? Not without triggering alarms that would alert the mercenaries to our position. Theron considered their options. We need a distraction. Nyara's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. Are you volunteering, Commander? Actually, Theron replied, eyeing a nearby environmental control panel, I have something a bit more subtle in mind. Working together, they reconfigured the local atmosphere processors to create a sudden pressure differential in the corridor outside the command center. When activated, the resulting rush of air created the perfect cover, alarms blaring, emergency protocols engaging, and mercenary forces momentarily disoriented. In the confusion, they slipped through the access hatch and into the command center's lower level. The station's primary systems were housed here, life support, navigation, and security all controlled from a central hub. If the mercenaries take control of these systems, Nyara said, they could depressurize the entire station or trigger a cascade failure in the reactor core. Then we don't let them, Theron replied simply, drawing a compact energy pistol from his boot, a place Valari security had neglected to search. They moved through the dimly lit chamber, the hum of the station's core systems providing cover for their footsteps. Above them, they could hear the mercenaries attempting to breach the main command center doors. We need to secure the override console, Nyara whispered, pointing to a raised platform at the center of the chamber. From there, we can lock out all other access points. As they approached the platform, movement caught Theron's eye, a shadow detaching itself from a cluster of conduits. He shoved Nyara aside just as a pulse of energy sizzled through the space where she had been standing. Well, a familiar voice called out from the shadows. The hero of humanity and the Valari sovereign, working together. How touching. The figure that stepped into the light made Theron's blood run cold. Admiral Renard, his former commanding officer, a man supposedly killed during a diplomatic mission 2 years earlier. Renard, Theron growled. I should have known. You always were perceptive, Vale, Renard replied with a cold smile. But not quite perceptive enough. Did you really think peace was possible? That centuries of conflict could be erased by treaties and handshakes? This isn't about peace or war, Theron replied, keeping his weapon trained on his former mentor. This is about power. Always has been. Nyara's voice was ice. You were behind Helios Prime. You ordered the death of my cousin. Necessary sacrifices, Renard shrugged. The conflict keeps both our peoples dependent on military leadership, on people like me. And the mercenaries? Theron asked, slowly edging toward the override console. Disaffected soldiers from both sides. People who understand that our species are destined to be enemies. Renard raised his own weapon. Now step away from the console. Theron exchanged a glance with Nyara, a wordless communication passing between them. In that moment, enemies for so long, they found perfect understanding. Nyara moved first, her luminescence flaring blindingly bright as she dropped to the floor. Theron fired in the same instant, his shot catching Renard in the shoulder. The Admiral staggered back, returning fire wildly as Theron dove for the console. His fingers flew across the interface, initiating the emergency lockdown sequence. Above them, the sounds of battle intensified as station security forces, coordinated by Lieutenant Rooks and Chief Voren, pushed back against the mercenaries. Renard recovered quickly, taking aim at Nyara as she scrambled for cover. Theron didn't hesitate, he threw himself into the line of fire. The energy pulse caught him in the side, searing through his uniform and into flesh. Nyara's ceremonial blade flashed in the dim light, thrown with deadly accuracy. It embedded itself in Renard's chest, the Admiral's expression one of shock as he collapsed to the floor. The pain in Theron's side was immediate and intense, but he forced himself to complete the lockdown sequence. Throughout the station, emergency bulkheads slammed into place, containment fields activated, and automated defense systems came online. Security systems restored, the station's AI announced calmly. Unauthorized access terminated. Nyara was beside him in an instant, her cool hands assessing his wound. You took that shot for me, she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Consider it, partial reparations, Theron managed through gritted teeth. To his surprise, a single luminescent tear traced its way down Nyara's cheek, a physiological response Valari rarely displayed in the presence of other species. It represented the deepest form of emotional acknowledgement in their culture. "Your actions today have balanced many scales, Commander Vale," she said formally. Then, more softly, "Theron." Communications restored, they soon heard the welcome news that the mercenary forces had been neutralized. Lieutenant Rooksa's voice crackled over the comm, reporting minimal casualties and the station's systems returning to normal function. As medical teams arrived, Nyara refused to leave Theron's side. The human and Valari staff exchanged confused glances at the sight of their leaders together, the feared butcher of Helios and the sovereign of the Valari, united in purpose. "Perhaps," Nyara said as they prepared to transport Theron to the medical bay, "we should revisit the historical record of Helios Prime. For the sake of a more accurate piece." Theron smiled through his pain. "I'd like that, Sovereign." "Nyara," she corrected, her luminescence pulsing with an emotion Theron couldn't quite identify. "Between us, at least, let there be no more titles." As they left the command center, the station's systems hummed back to life around them. Outside the viewing portal, stars shone clear and bright, silent witnesses to the first genuine step toward understanding between two species that had been enemies for too long. The peace summit would continue, but now with something far more powerful than treaties and protocols: truth, painfully earned and freely given, and the unexpected bond between former adversaries who had glimpsed within each other something worth preserving.